Deanna here, and this is Let's Watch with the Ann Arbor Film Festival. Every year, talented artists from all over the world aim to take part in our local film fests. Artists of all kinds unveil their passions and interests through film and performances at this internationally renowned annual event. Experimental animation artist Deanna Morse has an extensive collection of works with a strong focus on nature and its inhabitants. Welcome to the show, Deanna.
Thank you.
So why don't you tell me a little bit about your background and what sort of led you towards this nature and animals and things like that?
Well, I've been animating ever since college, and my goal was to make a film a year. And when I was in college, I was an art student. One of my curious interests was to see what you could do with different art. Like, what can you do only with a sculpture or a painting or an etching? And then I found animation, and I thought, what is it that you can do only with film? And for me, it's this idea of what's between the frames, working frame by frame. So a lot of my work has to do with time and nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely noticed the time lapse and like watching things bloom and things of that while watching your work. I only watched a couple little things of yours, but have you were mentioning before the show that you're a teacher too?
Yeah, I was a professor at Grand Valley State University here in Michigan, but now I've moved out to Oregon.
So you're retired now? Or? Yeah. So what did you teach at Grand Valley?
I taught film, video, animation.
Okay, so this has been something that's kind of followed your entire career,
My whole life.
Yeah,
my whole life.
And are you still making films?
I am. I'm still making animations, and I'm also involved internationally with the International Animation Society, ASIFA, and I still plug into festivals too. So I'm definitely, I have more time to do animation now.
Do you find animation's much different now than it was when you first started?
Totally, totally. I mean, I went from Super 8 film to 16 to computers, digital, and now, you know, computers touch every part of our lives, but definitely every part of the film experience too.
So do you find yourself ever going back to the film aspect of it, or you kind of just changed with the times and you're all digital now?
I am all digital, but I've gotten more interested in doing things that are tactile rather than sitting with a mouse and a computer. My passion right now is I'm animating physical things that I can touch with my hands. And I live with my family on a block. We have a bunch of chickens, and I've been gathering eggs and eggshells. So I have a whole drawer of eggshells that I've been practice animating with, and that's my next piece is going to involve something to do with a lot of broken eggshells.
So you're almost a multimedia artist.
I am.
Yeah. So you just, whatever you see, you really work with what you're seeing around you. That's your passion.
Yeah, and I am, as you said, I'm very interested in nature and the landscape and what we do when we inhabit this world and how we interact with flowers, plants, and the things around us.
So how has your sort of vision changed moving from Michigan to Oregon?
Well, one of the things is where I moved to, it's a Mediterranean climate, and we don't have any rain for like 6 months. And when I was in Michigan, I took my whole front yard and turned it into a prairie. We're going to see that in the film, Whispers of the Prairie, where there's this, you know, cacophony of flowers that bloom all through the season of the summer, and I never had to water or do anything to irrigate, and it's so different where I am now. It's a desert.
So you definitely are having to water and take more maintenance with your yard.
Yeah, and to figure out what will grow there that might be native to that area other than just rocks.
Well, why don't we take a look? Now that we know about the artist, let's watch one of her works, Whispers of the Prairie. We're back with Deanna Morse. Why don't you tell me a little bit of your inspiration when you were creating Whispers of the Prairie?
Well, it was political in that I wanted to push the idea of native landscaping. The idea for me is that you can create a sustainable part of an ecological environment in your little tiny yard, and it brings butterflies and birds. But so part of it is that, you know, that idea of trying to use not mowing, you know, not using chemicals, not using fertilizers, but trying to use native plants that would normally grow in your environment, your landscape. And then the other thing is my interest in what's between the frames. So I took over, you know, the course of actually a season and a half, I took pictures of every flower that was in my yard. And it's not the shape of the individual flowers that's really what it's about, but the difference of shape between the two flowers. So that's how you get that vibrating, pulsating energy as if the flowers are almost alive.
So how often were you going out there and shooting your flowers in your area outside of your house?
Well, pretty regularly, like every day that new things bloomed, I would go out. And part of it for me is just this sort of intentional looking at the landscape through the camera, which is a nice way of kind of a mindfulness or a meditation of examining parts of the landscape, much like an artist would do if they were drawing the flowers, except that it's just looking at them through the camera for a somewhat shorter period of time.
Mm-hmm. And you're using a video camera for this, or still?
I was using a still camera, and then I stitched it all together in an editing program.
Mm-hmm. And so in part of it, we see that we go to like that black background, and then you sort of create this animation.
Right. And for that, what I did was I took the flowers and I pulled the petals off and actually laid them on a scanner and scanned them and moved them a little bit, and then
So there was nothing. That was
scan.
just the scanner backdrop, the black.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had the plate open and I put a black thing over top of it, and then I just moved the petals if they could stand my touching them.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
What about the aspects where, you know, you're like plucking the grass or you're cutting it with scissors?
Mm-hmm.
And I think we saw a stormtrooper in there at one point.
Yeah, there's definitely a stormtrooper cleaning the grass, because I was trying to be sort of use that as a metaphor for how we deal with turf grass, that the regular turf grass has to be so manicured and so monochromatic. And I know people that spray painted their lawn.
Really?
You know, so, and you know how
it's like the Brady Bunch or something.
Yeah, and if you see a leaf, you have to pick it up. But that's, you know, contrasted with the variety of color that you get with a natural native landscape.
So if someone were to visit your house when you lived in Michigan, they really weren't seeing any grass.
No grass. A little tiny strip of grass, a little buffer for my neighbor.
Yeah, yeah. But like you would let just like the weeds grow and stuff too? Is that part of it, or you clean that
No,
up?
yeah, you still had to weed it. You still
Yeah.
had to weed it some, but hopefully the flowers would take over. And so it was mostly prairie, mostly flowers.
I actually thought about like maybe when I was watching it more like growth and then maybe the deconstruction of nature as well.
A lot of my film is about that. Films are about growth and decay and change over time. Yeah.
Well, why don't we check out another one of your works? Deanna uses her surroundings as inspiration, and it's evident in her next work, Postcards from My Backyard.
He put it away.
Is it still there?
Oh, he got inside the tree. Oh, he's coming out.
He went inside?
Oh my God. We ran out of tape. Oh, that was so cute.
Welcome back. We're here with Deanna, and she just showed us postcards from my backyard, which you can definitely see a theme in your work. But this one's a little different because you have the abstract background, and then you create these boxes on the inside. So what were your thoughts when you were creating this piece?
Well, I lived in a really beautiful space, and so part of the idea was to think of like a postcard. That was the box idea. Just to take images of a common space around you and amplify it in a way or make it more important, maybe, like you would send a wish you were here postcard when you were from another city. Here I'm doing it from just my house, the place I see every day. And to create the piece, I set up a camera actually for over 2 years from one viewpoint in my window. And that camera watched, the seasons change from winter to fall to spring and then
So
fall
it was just
again.
continuously running for 2 years, or you
Well,
just turn it on at certain
I would
parts of the
turn it
day?
on. Yeah, I would turn it on and off on days that we had sun, basically, where I knew there were going to be shadows glancing over the landscape, through my backyard.
Yeah, actually, that was one of the things I wrote down was how important shadow and light is to you as you're creating your work.
It's a really, for me, it's a visible way that you see time and change. And I love shadow and love light. And I love the way that shadows glance around different shapes. They're not just straight, but they change their shape as they go around shapes. And it's the kind of thing, too, that you can't really see except through time lapse. So if you just sit and look at it, I mean, maybe some Zen person could actually speed it up like that, but you can't, it's not revealed until you use film to speed it up, and then it's just so magical to me how it, glances over spaces. And
Yeah, it's really beautiful to watch it sort of move, and you're not experiencing that in your real life.
yeah, and even though it's time sped up, I find it very calming.
Yeah, it is. I
Yeah.
agree with you. Did you feel like when you were doing this project, because it was over 2 years, were there any surprises that you found?
Yeah, a lot. Well, mostly the little birds that would, peek up, like the bird in the tree at the end and the heron that was there, and the snow that was melting and revealing flowers. And sometimes bad surprises too, like somebody bonks the camera when they're looking at it or whatever. There were mistakes too, but yeah. But often good surprises of just not knowing how the light was going to move, but when you see it moving, realizing that it's really interesting.
Well, and you also did that part in it where you do like those quick dissolves between the leaves. Is that just supposed to be like the changing from one season to the next?
Yes, yeah.
So do you have like a favorite season that you sort of work with, that you find the most beauty in it?
Well, here I really did like the springtime which is crazy to say because you guys just experienced it, but when you have those snows that come for a day and then melt, and then come for a day and then melt, I like that time of year. And also because the crocuses are peeking up and you have that hint of what's to come, which is spring and summer.
Just now, I was looking at my flower beds. I need to clean them up. But yeah, I was just seeing like those little tiny pieces of green poking up, and then like a couple little purple flowers. And it's like, to me, that is like, I completely understand what you're saying. It's such an exciting time because you're like, oh, we're finally getting out of this, and we're going to see some beauty, and not just like the dull gray that we've been living in for the past like 6 months, basically.
That's right. Change is coming, and change is good.
Yeah, and I feel like that's like a lot of the message that your films portray too. That, I mean, yes, we talk about the deconstruction of nature and stuff like that too, but you're also, I feel like you're always looking for the beauty in your surroundings, and it's just like a really great way to look at life.
Oh, thank you for saying that. That's really nice. I'm glad you felt that.
Yeah. So did you have, were either one of these the ones that we've seen anything at the Ann Arbor Film Festival, or what have you had at the Ann Arbor Film Festival?
I think both of those films were in Ann Arbor, and I've had other films in too, but as many filmmakers, I've also had films that I entered that did not get in because this festival is so competitive.
Well, and I think like as an artist, you have to be able to take rejection and a critique. And you can't let it get to you because like maybe one film festival doesn't want your work and then another one does. You never really know what's going to happen, and you just got to keep your mind open to the possibilities.
Yeah, it's true. And the numbers are huge. I mean, they had this year, I think, 3,100 entries, and they selected 107 or 117 or something. So, I mean, that's a huge cut of a lot of fabulous films. And I was privileged to be on the selection committee, so I saw a lot of fabulous films that were not programmed. And a lot of great films are programmed too, of course.
Yeah, and I'm sure that gives you some sort of creative thinking about your own work when you get to watch other people's films.
Totally.
So we're actually going to take a look at one last piece of yours. Deanna has even shared her love of nature with one of the most beloved children's shows of all time, Sesame Street. Let's watch Monkey T-Shirt.
Look, the animals are hiding. Can you find them? Can you find the lion? Very good. Can you find the zebra? Great. Can you find the giraffe? How about the snake? Can you find the bird? And the elephant? And last, but certainly not least, can you find the monkey? Very good. You found all the animals.
Yeah. All right.
Very good.
Oh, that was marvelous. That was great.
Interesting shirt.
Yeah, you got that right.
I'm here with Deanna Morse, intermediate artist specializing in experimental animation, and we just watched Monkey T-Shirt. So why don't you tell me a little bit about your idea, your thinking behind making Monkey T-Shirt, and it was for Sesame Street, so did you create it specifically for Sesame Street, or did you create it and then submit it?
Well, Sesame Street has a really, they used to, they don't do a lot of animated shorts anymore, but they used to ask people to create shorts for them. They had a long educational guideline book of what the shorts would be, and they'd ask you to pitch an idea, and this idea was called embedded figures, where basically you look at a picture and then you find the images within the picture. So it was made in concert with them, approval and having educational objectives and much more design than an independent film where you're just doing it on your own.
So how did you come up with the idea for the Monkey T-Shirt?
I think it was inspired by, I worked with Rose Rosley, a graphic artist, and I think it was inspired by both of our love of playing those games when you were kids, like the Where's Waldo, where you'd look at two things and you'd see what's different. And to me, it was really good for children to look into a frame and study what's there and kind of analyze it rather than just let it wash over them. So yeah, I can't remember exactly how we came up with the jungle theme, I think because of the idea of hiding things within one frame.
Well, I had mentioned to you before the show that when you sent that to me, I was like, I feel like I've seen it before, but you were saying this is something that like a lot of people, Sesame Street played that clip a lot.
Yeah, the clip went international and went for years and was played a lot. My parents told me they saw it one day when they turned on the TV. I saw it one day when I turned on Sesame Street. It was aired a great deal.
Did you like sort of working with those parameters where they were giving you kind of like the guidelines? Did that help you create?
Yeah, I liked working, definitely liked working and for that show because I love Sesame Street myself too. So yeah, I liked working within that constraints.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
you've had a couple other shorts that you did with Sesame Street before,
Mhm.
kind of moving on and doing your own thing a little bit more too.
Yeah, yeah. I would have done more of it, but the schedule of it was just didn't work out with my teaching schedule. It was too much, too many deadlines at the same time.
But what a fantastic thing. I mean, like, that's amazing. Because Sesame Street, I loved it. My daughter watched it for a short period. I mean, kids still love it today. Unfortunately, HBO had to buy it, but PBS still gets the rights to it, too, to replay it. While I have you, and we're almost done here, why don't you talk about, you obviously are a big fan of the Ann Arbor Film Festival. I mean, you lived in Grand Rapids, and then you moved across the country, but now you've come back just to be here for the festival. So why do you think it's so important to support the Ann Arbor Film Festival?
Well, this is really an important, top-notch international festival in the Ann Arbor area. You know, they're celebrating 57 years. It's the longest-running film festival, I think, of its kind in America. And they've consistently programmed really good and interesting and innovative and challenging work, which works in this community, I think, because people like to try things that kind of stretch them out of their comfort zone. The audiences here are so good and so supportive of the independent film community, and the theater is fabulous and it's well run and the films are top notch. And I don't know where else you get a chance to see this kind of experimental artwork, you know, in America.
Yeah, for sure. So that's all we have for today. Thank you so much for coming on the show and taking the time out of, I mean, obviously you're on a vacation sort of right now,
Yeah.
so you took the time out of your vacation to be in studio with us. We really appreciate that.
Great. Thanks so much for having me. It was wonderful to be here.
For more on this and other CTN series, visit a2gov.org/watchctn. Check out our full lineup at youtube.com/CTN Ann Arbor, and remember to like, comment, and share. I'm Dana Denhoff for Let's Watch with the Ann Arbor Film Festival.